Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Scarves Around the Funnel, the podcast dedicated to Heart of Midlothian Football Club. Still top of the table and guaranteed to be so. Going into April, they said we wouldn't be in October or November or December or January or February or March, and they were all wrong. But can we stay there? 7 games to go, and Hearts still lead the way. Coming up today on the show, we'll look back at the 1-0 win over Dundee at the weekend. And as we sit here today, it's 5 years to the day since Hearts PTSD had that disastrous Scottish Cup result at Brora. So rather than look back too much on that one, we want to look ahead and see where Hearts might be 5 years from now and how many of the squad might still be around. So while we're kind of in a nostalgic way of thinking, we've stripped it back to the bare bones. And the man alongside me today, it was him and I that started a podcast back in 2018, when incidentally, Hearts were also top of the table. But going into that, we weren't sure what we were going to call it. How about Commentator's Eye? Because I used to be and he now is. But we decided to call it Scarves Around the Funnel. And this is episode 396. And we're back where it all began. Hello, Laurie Dunsire.
Good evening, Mark. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, I mean, as you say, still top of the league, so can't complain too much, albeit uh, still tense, still nervy, and it's probably not going to change anytime soon.
Sunday was good, wasn't it? Especially after all the Celtic fans commenting after Hearts put out the tweet following the 1-0 loss at Kilmarnock. They weren't as quick with their keyboards, were the Warriors from the East End of Glasgow on Sunday, following a beautiful Sunday for Dundee United. But of course, there was something to blame, and it was the pitch for Celtic, because Dundee United didn't have to play on it, and Hearts didn't have to play on it at the end of January. Only Celtic did. But that's what we're up against, Laurie.
Yeah, I think one thing that this season has certainly given us is a lot more games to be really interested in. Obviously we've had seasons past where you're fighting for third, or unfortunately, you're maybe fighting towards the bottom of the table, which thankfully hasn't been the norm. And you're looking at other games, but not to the same extent now. So I think there's quite often at weekends where I'm watching Rangers and Celtic games, and it's almost as nerve-wracking or as enjoyable as watching Hearts. Certainly, the recent weekend when obviously Livingston managed to get points off Rangers and Celtic lost to Hibs, and then this weekend as well, I think of the Old Firm game as well, looking for a draw when there was a penalty and it scored at the end. I was cheering that. And I was jumping around and cheering again when Dundee United were scoring against Celtic. And I think that's the big thing. Derek McInnes has pointed it out, and lots of people have pointed out. We've spoken about it. You've talked about it on the podcast. Hearts will slip up. They slipped up against Kilmarnock. It was a disappointment. It was a poor performance. And Hearts are not going to win the next 7 games before the end of the season. I mean, I would love to be proven wrong there. I don't think they will. But ultimately, I don't think Rangers and Celtic will either.
No,
And that's
they
been
won't.
shown again. And I think my former co-commentator and someone also worked at Hearts who now works at the BBC, Andrew Petrie, put an article out there, and I messaged him about it because it's like, wow, that's a big one you've pointed out there, when he said that only once this season have all three of those teams won on the same weekend. I think
Yeah, that
technically,
surprised me.
technically, if there hadn't been a rearrangement of one particular round of fixtures, I think there might be another. But in terms of actual matches that were played on a weekend, there's only been one occasion where all three of Hearts, Celtic, and Rangers have won matches, and that's just the perfect example of how this season's going. That they'll all drop points, and I think the big thing for me on Sunday with the Celtic game is that's the worst I've seen them, and that's including the Wilfried Nancy games as well.
Yeah,
That is the
they were dreadful.
absolute worst I've seen them. Were terrible. United, and at 2-0, if someone was going to score again, it was Dundee United. So that's certainly encouraging, but there's a long way to go. Celtic are certainly the outsiders now, but if the next round of fixtures, Hearts and Rangers both slip up, then the picture changes again. So yeah, a long way to go, but hey, 3 points clear, with 2 games left before the split. You couldn't really complain about that, could you? Where we were at the start of the season and where we were in January with two of our key players being out injured for a sustained period.
You would think this is rehearsed in advance. It's definitely not if you've been listening since the start, but that is the perfect segue for me to look at my league table and find out that back when Lawrence Shankland got hurt, Hearts had played 22 games and had a 6 point lead over Celtic and Rangers. 50 points, with Celtic and Rangers also having played 22 games, and they were both on 44. Now, yes, it was a 6 point lead, and now it's not as much as that. However, we've done so without our two best players, Shankland and Devlin. We still have a 5 point lead over Celtic, having played 9 games since Lawrence Shankland went down with that injury. So when you look at that, Laurie, to be only 1 point worse off and to still have a 5 point lead, there are so many people saying that's it, they're done. They can't cope with losing those two players. Yet we're still there. Why do you think that is?
I, I mean, an element of it is still Rangers and Celtic, it has to be said, and I don't think you can take away from that. I don't think it necessarily dilutes what we've done this season, but undoubtedly, the fact that neither Rangers or Celtic have managed to consistently get results week in, week out, and consistently get wins, I should say. But I'll admit, I messaged someone I know who's a Celtic fan because when Devlin was out, before Devlin was out, I think I'd messaged him about the fact that we can't, Devlin and Shankland are the two big players for us. We can't lose them. Then I messaged him when Devlin was out, going, typical, that's happened. Then when Shankland was confirmed was out, I was like, can you believe that that's what's happened now? And I said, look, I would just take us still being in the hunt, in the race, not even necessarily even top. If they're out for 2 months, I think it was the talk at that time, and it's been around that. I was like, I would just take with us still being in with a chance. Not even necessarily just being top still, because I thought Celtic were going to really kick on at that point, and I knew we wouldn't be able to kind of have the same level, certainly of control over games, because Cammy does so much in the middle, and Shanklin, which I'm sure we'll get onto when we talk about
Yeah.
the his reappearance in the Dundee game, gave us so much kind of control in attack as well. And without them, we weren't going to be able to be the same team. We would have to adapt. And I think although we've had some poor performances in there, we've had some poor results. We've ground out some wins. We've had some good performances and decent wins as well. But I think ultimately what we've done very well is find different ways of getting over the line. And 4-1-0 wins at home in a row is testament to that fact that Derek McInnes's game management is often so good. And I'm guilty, as many fans have been frustrated when you get to maybe the 10 minutes left in a game or
Hmm.
something. And McInnes' his thought is, see this out and you'll make changes. And it's almost like, oh no, we just know that we're going to have to sit in and wait for full time. Whereas obviously a lot of us would really ideally like a second goal and we could maybe enjoy the final 5-10 minutes. But that's not always a sensible thing, because if you push for a second goal, that will leave you more open at the back. And no matter who you're playing, if they chuck loads of attacking players on and they're going to start launching the ball at you, something might drop in, might give them a big chance. So it's sensible, albeit it's hard to kind of deal with at the time, because it's like, oh no, it's another nervy last few minutes. And I'm probably terrible for people who have to tune in, because it comes out in me, even in games like the Aberdeen game was actually very comfortable. The Dundee game, they didn't threaten the second half, they didn't have a shot on target the second half. But I can't help it. I get nervous when we get to the end and then Ked gets sent off, and that probably comes out. So anyone who has to watch probably hears my nerves coming through in my commentary towards the end, because you just don't know when there's only one goal in it. It could, someone could hit a worldie from 30 yards. Someone might have a wild swipe at something and give away a penalty. You just don't know what might happen. So I think you've got to credit Derek McInnes's game management and the players for digging out results, and a few for stepping up. And I think for me, the biggest player to step up is Claudio Braga. in Shankland's absence, because a strong mention for Leonard as well, I think, because he's come
Hmm.
in from Birmingham, did brilliantly. But I think, you know, in January for me, Braga had been a good player for us this season, but he wasn't for me one of the key three or four. No disrespect to him, but I thought, your Halkett, Devlin, Shankland, especially through the middle, and then Milne maybe just behind him. For me, Braga had still had a few off days. He had a spark, he had some great games, he had some off games. But I think the way he stepped into a sort of leading role in attack, and a different role as well, being the man who's expected to hold it up, to link play more, I think done fantastically. So I think a huge amount of credit goes to him for playing a different role in attack, and now he's suddenly one of those key players for what he's done this season. So I think, yeah, a few players stepping up, the team for managing to find different ways to win games, and Derek McInnes for his game management in a lot of those matches. You can criticize him for certain games, rightly so, with certain decisions, but I think on the whole, the way he's got us to this point deserves a heap of credit. And if we win the league this season, I think a lot of it will have to go down to the manager, as it often does. But I think
Sure.
a lot of talk of Jamestown, a lot of talk of individual talent and stuff. But I think the transitional period we're in, whatever happens in the future, I think McInnes is definitely the man for us right now. And if it doesn't happen, then I think he will have still done an awful lot to get us this close.
Lot to talk about this week. By the next time we play at Livingston, we might not be top of the table. Rangers played Dundee United on the Saturday, so that's an interesting narrative. If they are successful at home against Dundee United, then for the first time since the early part of the season, we'll be playing catch up. However, at Livingston the following day on the Sunday, the majority of our squad are likely to be fit. And with that comes not selection headaches, it's a good headache to have, but how many of the players who have been out and have slowly started to come back would be in contention to start that game. So Laurie and I can look ahead to a potential starting 11. Obviously, Mark Leonard was brought in when Cammy Devlin went down. At the weekend, it was Cammy Devlin playing alongside Mark Leonard. Is that a duo in midfield that can take us through for the rest of the season? Or are they maybe too similar? Could Benny come back in? There's a lot of potentials here. Oisin McEntee, is that now our best option at right back? Jordi Altona, it's clear that he likes him in certain positions, but maybe not as a right back. So we'll look at kind of individual battles as we pick our best 11. We'll look ahead to the Livy game coming up as well. And we'll also take a look back at that Brora game and see who's still at the football club 5 years to the day since that disaster up north. But more importantly, we're going to look 5 years ahead and see how many, if any, of the current squad at Tynecastle might still be in Gorgie. You're listening to Scarves Around the Funnel, sponsored by Forrest Hepburn and McDonald Signs, who've been offering creative sign and print solutions since the 1950s. So we always start with the team news, and you prepped after seeing the team, and then Halkett has back spasms, so he's unable to play, and we've got a back four of McLaren, Kidd, McPherson, and McKinley to start the game. Was it just me that was slightly concerned, or did that kind of penetrate its way through to Tynecastle as well, and those in the stands?
Oh, I mean, it was like I think I messaged Joel Sked when I heard that news. It's just talking about players that started going out when we're just getting players back, and I think I said this is a perfect time for me to send you that Jim Carrey liar liar. Oh come on meme. When he's trying to take a drink of water, it's like Shanks and Cammy Devlin return, and suddenly Halkett and Harry Milner out, and it's like, give us a break, guys. And I think the Heart Standard, I think it was the one with Liam Corbett, possibly they pointed this out, which is a really good point actually. That It doesn't seem to be an awful lot being made out with Hearts of the fact that Hearts have been missing pretty much an entire team for the last couple of months. I think I maybe sent the group actually at one point. I actually managed to make an 11, which one or two positions were pushing it a little bit, but a good eight or nine of that 11 would have a potential chance to start a Hearts game at one point with the players that we had out. So we'd be missing massive players for huge periods of time, and it just doesn't seem to be talked about. And I know we've got a lot of players, but it doesn't mean that we've got a 30 plus players all at the same level. And we're going into this game. It's like, well, we don't actually have a left back. I know we're playing a centre back there who's only there really by default because he's the left-footed one. And yeah, Halkett dropping out was so big because he's the leader at the back and he's been stepping up so much. So maybe you could say it's good timing because it meant that actually when these players dropped out, we did have the likes of Devlin and Shankland coming back, who are two other leaders. But yeah, the back line was in the end, obviously we weren't sure who would be right back, but it was McEntee. But yeah, we got McEntee at right back, Kent and Steinwender. It's the kind of Neil Critchley centre back pairing. I've not got it in front of me, but I
Mm.
don't think they've played an awful lot as a centre back pairing this season. And McCart at left back, so it's really makeshift. I think with Steinwender, I feel sorry for him at times because he's had some really tough games at right back, but he is a centre back, and I don't know if that's been forgotten at times, but
Yeah.
because we've got so many centre backs on the
He's a
book,
very good centre back as well.
he is, and I've got a lot of time for him actually. I think you look at obviously Halkett's by far our best option there. I think McCart's a very good centre back. I think Finlay's had a very good start to the season. I think the second half has been a bit more up and down, but I think Steinwender gives you a little bit more composure on the ball. So I think he's quite a good pairing for maybe a Halkett if everyone's fit or something like that, or a Finlay if Halkett wasn't available at some point again. So I think as a centre back, I've never had a big problem with Michael Steinwender. I think at right back, sometimes the fact he's not a natural player there does get highlighted a bit more. So yeah, it was I was worried. I was speaking to the Dundee lads before the game, and I was like, you know, you boys like to get out wide, and that's Yogan and Concrete have had really good seasons for Dundee. We've got a centre back on one side and either a very attacking right back who defensively is still learning to be a defender in Altona, or we've got someone who's fairly solid, but he's either a centre midfielder or a centre back, really, in McEntee. So those are two positions where you could potentially threaten us. But on the whole, despite Dundee starting the game stronger, I didn't think we were overly troubled by them throughout. Albeit in the first half, I don't think anyone really troubled anyone.
I thought it was a good move in the 26th minute. It was a 1-2 between Braga
Yeah.
and Altona. And in the end, there was a challenge that came in. It wasn't a penalty for me. I was interested to kind of see Braga's reaction, especially after Kilmarnock, where there's still that debate if he'd gone down, would he have got a penalty? I think he was making sure that if there was contact at any stage in the box, whether it was before or after the shot has come in, he would make everyone aware that there was contact. It wasn't a great first half, and it's been very similar of a lot of these 1-0 home wins recently, where we've been slow to get going, but we limit the opposition as well. And I don't really want to focus too much on the first half. I think it's all about the 54th minute when Spittle and Shankland come on for Altona and Kabori. Interesting that Altona came off. He'd looked all right in that kind of, what was that, an advanced eight role
I
that
think
Derek
that's what
McInnes
McInnes called it, yeah.
called it. Yeah, but Shankland coming on. That's that's like the conductor of the orchestra returning, and everybody can play again. And just seeing him now being a focal point for the opposition going, right, shit, we have a problem here. So they focus their attention on him. They've still got to deal with Braga. Now they don't have the same attention on Kizaridis. And I think for me, he could be the biggest beneficiary because prior to Shankland going out injured, I know he hasn't scored at home since the Celtic game, I think in October, but we haven't seen his best. But Hearts have been easier to play against without Shankland, and as a result, I think Laurie, you're going to see Kizaridis, and he'd be one of the first names on my team sheet for the game at Livingston. Not because of the way he's been playing, but if Shankland plays from the start at Livingston, and he certainly will against Motherwell if he doesn't, then Kizaridis for me could be one of the key players for Hearts between now and the end of the season.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'll mention from the first half, which will kind of tie into what we're talking about now, is the best chance of the game at any point,
Kabori.
which
Yeah.
yeah, which Alexander Svolo sends that long ball forward. It's a brilliant flick on by Braga. I mean, his ability in the air is absolutely incredible. I mean, it was Luke Graham attacking the ball, and in those positions, you always favour, the defender who's attacking the ball, seeing it coming all the way, to an attacker who's having to try and attack it coming over his head to flick it the other direction. And Luke Graham's a big guy. Braga's not the biggest guy, but he gets up way above him and flicks it on. And sometimes it just shows you that you don't have to play 15, 20 passes to create a chance. You can go route one. Similar to Antiniemi launching it over for Mark De Vries to not actually get a touch, but almost get a touch to see it go for Andy Kirk. Andy Kirk's lobbed finish over the Hibs goalkeeper that day was superb.
Yeah.
Kabori's was not. And
No.
I think one thing I mentioned in comms was a thing I'd read in the BBC that was since the start of February, Hearts have scored, before this game, had scored 5 league goals from 77 shots, a conversion rate of 6.5%, which was the worst in the league in that time. And I think that tied in with Shankland not being available. So it's not just about, as you say, Shankland necessarily being the one taking chances, but it's probably to do with the quality, I would imagine, of the chances that we are creating in that as well. And I don't want to make it a Kabore bashing thing. I thought he had a really poor game, and he has had some games where he's not really been at the level. But he's not Lawrence Shankland. He's a, whether it makes it Hearts or whether he doesn't make it Hearts, he's a raw talent. We brought him in from a level of football which is quite a distance below where he's come to. So he's always going to be probably at best hit or miss in this early season. But the difference between him and Shankland is stark. And Shankland knows this league well. He's a quality player, and his intelligence and the way he reads the game and picks the right option, not just in terms of when he gets a chance to try and score, but in terms of playing players in. I think you're right. I think Braga will be able to turn. We'll be able to be the man getting on the end of things, maybe a bit more than being the creator at times that he has been in the last couple of months. And I think Kizaridis, I've really felt sorry for Kizaridis because we often have no threat on the right. Teams can comfortably do a bit more doubling up on the other side because they don't really have to get stretched out on the other side. It's, got Milne trying to burst forward on the left. You've got Kizaridis trying to make things happen. So often it's very easy for teams just to focus on that side and stifle him. So I'm hoping that will open things up for him and Braga. But Shankland being back is so key. And we don't even have to necessarily pick particular moments in the second half. Just his presence, the way he holds things up, he plays quick little passes. Sometimes it's such simple things. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily a defense splitting pass or a 50-yard crossfield ball. It's just sometimes the way he cushions the ball to players or flicks it on. It was a brilliant little flick header that he sent, I think, Braga in on just to get him in on goal in the second half. His his ability is sometimes underestimated if you do because it's just the small things he does, which he makes look easy, but are actually not that easy. And it just gets the whole team pushing forward. I think that's the big thing when we get into transition and we're trying to get in behind teams. He'll get us in the right positions. He'll play the right passes and he'll get himself in good positions as well. So I think that'll be a key thing for us in the final third is having Shankland back. And I think it told because the second half, it wasn't like we were peppering Dundee's goal, but we had far more control in the second half. We were the team getting up into the final third. And I think a lot of that was to do with Shankland, just with his movement, his touches, and his awareness. And largely it's why we won the game, because we deserved to win the game in the end.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking with regards to Kabori, there's similarities between a young man at USG by the name of Promise David and Landry Kabori in their path to get to a bigger club in Europe. They both came from Estonian clubs and moved on. Promise David, who's now valued at 17 million and is a Canadian international, he came from Nom Kalju in Estonia, whereas Pierre-Landry Kabori came from Transnarva in Estonia the following season. Now, they were both very raw, and Laundry Kabori is still very raw. And listening to Hearts Standard, Craig and Joel still questioning whether or not he is going to make it at Hearts. I think having Lawrence Shankland as someone he can learn from, rather than replacing Lawrence Shankland, which is pretty much what he's had to do when called upon. And he played well against Aberdeen, he played well against Dundee United, but those have been the two outliers, and he's struggled. And whether it's been too much, I don't know. He's not going to replicate Promise David right now, who started his career in Belgium very quickly, got his goal early doors, and then finished his first season with 19. For Laundry Kabori, look, what we do and the players that Hearts are signing, you don't go to an Estonian backwater, or you don't go to a Norwegian second division, or you don't go to a Slovenian side and expect to get 100% success rate when you're buying these players. You're going to get some hits and you're going to get probably more misses. But all you need is one to hit and get 10 times what you've paid for them, and you've won a watch. So Kabori's an interesting one. He can still be brought on as someone who can cause chaos and maybe attract attention for the defence to allow others into space. But right now, I don't think it's a bad thing if he maybe has some time on the bench now, because he just looks low in confidence. And all it takes. And I understand why he started this game, because he scored 2 goals against Dundee at home. And there might be those that going, what's he starting for? It's like horses for courses. If you've had success against a team before, maybe you feel better. There's so many players that have got a good record against certain clubs. But yeah, he started. He didn't have a great game and was replaced. Right now, Promise David's going to earn Union Saint-Gilloise, Tony Bloom's Belgian club, a lot of money. I still think Laundry Kabori's got a long way to go before that. Now, Hearts took the lead in this one in the 77th minute. And since Shankland and Spittle came on in the 54th minute for Kabori and Altena, it was mainly Hearts in the second half. But just before, see if you can remember this one, Laurie. I'm sure you spoke about it with Jimmy. Just before we scored, there was a similar free kick, and it's something that Hearts had been working on, according to Derek McInnes, at training on the Friday. But McEntee's not made the run when he was meant to. And it looked like it was a waste. I think it was just looked like it was overhit and behind it went. But then when Derek McInnes said afterwards that that was pretty much exactly the same move as the goal that they'd scored, just as well it was overhit, because Dundee didn't really know how to defend when that ball was played in.
All part of the ploy, just give them a false sense of security at the back post, and
Indeed.
then yeah, that would be real kind of thinking ahead of schedule for set piece coaches. If you're starting to say play a bad set play, and then the next time we get it in a similar position, it means that they won't defend it properly. But it's like one step ahead. If you remember, for a while the popular thing was for players to act like they messed up a free kick. Like
Yes,
one would run up,
yes.
another one would say, "Oh, is it you? Is it me?" And to try and get everyone to um, start to be distracted by it. Uh, yeah, it's sometimes hard to tell with set plays, because you see it sometimes with corners when they try and roll it to short, or they roll it, or they play it low to the front post or something. And I've been guilty in commentary sometimes of saying it was a poor corner, and the idea was maybe to play it low to the front post for someone to try and get a little back heel on it or something, or someone to then knock it back out. And sometimes these things don't work, and it is hard to tell when you're just watching, if you don't know what they've worked on, whether it was just poorly hit, or it was intended in that position and someone to make the right run, or if it just didn't come off, because sometimes the defending team just manages them well. Um, with set plays, actually, although we've been the best team in the league at them, I think apart, non-penalty, if you take that out of the equation, I think that's the first set play we've got a goal direct from since the Celtic match at the end of January, actually.
Hmm.
When Findlay scored the header, and then Braga also got one, which you could
Yeah.
say like second phase from the free kick. But I don't think, off the top of my head, that we've scored one, certainly not from the first phase of a set play since then. So it's good that we've got back on the mark with them. And it's a difficult one as well, because the free kick's pretty central, and it's what 40 yards plus from goal. It's not in a position that you'd think looks very threatening. So I think you've really got to credit Oisin McEntee with that one. Similar to the goal at Celtic Park. It's a fantastic header to get up, get the power behind it. If you're Dundee, you're probably a little bit disappointed with John McCracken because he gets across it. He gets quite a big hand on it, but pushes it into the back of the net. But yeah, he's come up with a couple of really big goals now for us, McEntee, and that's what you need to do. I think at this stage of the season is find a way through. And how many times down the years have we seen Celtic and Rangers do this type of thing in matches when it comes to crucial points? You maybe watch them and go, "Ugh, that this Rangers team or Celtic team are nothing special," but they just find a way,
Mhm.
and that's what we've done here. So really pleased for McEntee. Obviously, he's been out for a few weeks with injury. Terrific header and well deserved, as I mentioned, for the second half, for the overall performance. And yeah, just I think what was it? So 4-1 wins in a row at home now. I know that's our score line, and I think Derek McInnes kind of relishes those games a little bit. I would like at some point before the end of the season to have a game where Hearts are winning by more than a goal, and we can just relax just a little bit.
Yeah, that's boring though. That's boring.
I
In
suppose.
the fir- in the first 19 games of this season, Hearts won 1-0 once. That was against Hibs. And in the 12 games since the turn of the year, Hearts have won 1-0 six times, which says a lot. But it also says a lot that Hearts won 1-0 at the weekend with a back four of McCart, Steinvender, Kent, and McEntee. And if that was your back four in a bounce game, you'd be like, oh God. But it was like with 8 games to go, it was a crucial Premiership match. And they did great. I thought Steinvender in his natural position, oh, shock horror, he plays well as a centre back. He's a good player, and he did great. Frankie Kent, yeah, he was sent off towards the end for a second bookable offence. Shouldn't be too much of an issue. Halkett will come back. Kent is a backup. He'll be suspended. However, Craig Halkett will be available, you would think, according to Derek McInnes for Livingston, and even for some reason, if he's not, Michael Steinvender would probably get the nod with Frankie Kent suspended. But I want to take you, Laurie, to a piece that was on Hearts Standard over the weekend, and it's basically a Hearts 46 game stat. And the title is Enough Hasn't Been Made of Hearts Losing Key Players. These 7 players have missed a combined 46 games since the start of 2026. Lawrence Shankland, Cammy Devlin, Benny Beningame, Oisin McEntee, Stephen Kingsley, Stuart Finlay, and Aju. Yet a lot of talk prior to the start of the season. Hearts have got a big squad. How they're going to keep everybody happy. We've needed that. But I think bigger picture here, Derek McInnes needs to get a lot of praise because it's difficult, you would think, to keep everybody happy when the majority of your squad isn't playing. But because you're winning, it's maybe a little bit easier. You still have to kind of elicit this team spirit that we saw with everybody on the bench celebrating, Shankland and Devlin and Craig Gordon and the others when they've been hurt celebrating as well. But that's a lot of games that 7 key players have missed.
Oh, absolutely. That's what I'm saying earlier in the podcast. A lot was made of Celtic's absentees, and they've had a few big players out for the season, but they've not had the same number that we have. And certainly in the last couple of months, I know they've had the likes of Jota's just not good. He's not going to be involved at all this season. Alistair Johnston, who is a big miss to be fair, they've struggled in that right back position, which is shown by the fact that instead of putting a right back on, they put a central midfielder there who then did not look too clever in that position. But I think you look at the difference when you watch Celtic, and I don't see that same togetherness with them. I think, Martin O'Neill deserves a little bit of praise for getting something out of them, but at the same time, when Dundee United went ahead, I didn't see that team maybe fighting for each other. I didn't see the kind of desire and togetherness there. And there's still some good players in that Celtic team. It's certainly a poor Celtic team in the grand scheme of things, but I don't see that togetherness from them, the same fight, the same team spirit. I see a few players out there who shoulders go down. They don't want to be battling in third spot in the league. They've been used to Celtic being comfortable. Um, Rangers, uh, when the chips are down, it'll be very interesting. They're on a good run of form. They're playing pretty well on the whole. They're winning. To be fair, I watched the game against Aberdeen. They didn't really look in that much danger, but it'll be interesting to see when they get tested properly. Still, only Hearts have beaten them this season. So I think that's a big part of it. I think the team spirit that's been fostered by Derek McInnes and everyone getting involved. And I think, Alan Forrest is one of these examples. And don't get me wrong. I realize that Alan Forrest is not the level that Hearts will want to aspire to long term, but he wasn't even in the match squad. He was only stripped in the end because Craig Halkett had a back spasm before the game. But he came on and he worked hard when he came on. And it's could be easy for someone who's not even necessarily getting to the match squads to be like, well, I'm getting chucked on for a few minutes at the end of the game just to basically see the game out. I don't really, that's not what I want to be doing, but I think everyone does their bit when they're called upon. And look, I
Hmm.
mean, I didn't think Frankie Kent had a great game beyond just getting sent off. I think compared to the other defenders, there's a little lack of composure there at times. I think he can be a bit clumsy. Things get kind of hooked and sliced into the air or headed up into the air. But he still steps up, and you can't question his effort and his commitment. So I think that's a big part of it. And that's why I think this season, Hearts may well move on from Dennis. Well, they will at some point. Hearts will move on from Dennis McInnes, and I hope that when we do, it's in a progressive sense for Hearts. But I think this season, with a huge squad in a transitional period, with a lot of players who maybe aren't going to be sort of Jamestown picks, if you will, long term still here, I think he has been the best man for this job to get that squad firing, to get the most out of players that maybe have certain limitations. So yeah, I think that's perfect. And it's been great to see, in games we've got Shankland and Cammy jumping about and celebrating. I know Cammy himself said it's been awful for him. He hates not being on the grass, and it's no surprise that he seems to kick every ball even when he's on the sideline. So yeah, a big part of it is that team spirit, and I think again, McInnes has to take a huge amount of credit for that.
And Cammy Devlin needs to take a huge amount of credit for playing 76 minutes and starting a game when he'd been out for so long. Fantastic to see him back. Great to see Shankland back. And a huge roar greeted the full-time whistle by Don Robertson, who didn't have a great game. But anyway, I don't want to
No,
spend any time talking about him. We've had a lot of rubbish referees of late, but hey, it's all about what we do. And it doesn't matter what anybody else does if Hearts take care of business. We then have to look elsewhere and hope. If we don't do our job, we've got to hope for help for elsewhere. But as long as we do our job, which we did again, then we'll accept any help that's gratefully received, like Dundee United beating Celtic by 2-0. So as it stands, with 7 games remaining, Hearts, Rangers, and Celtic have all played 31. Hearts have got 66 points. Celtic have got 61 in third, and Rangers are 3 points back on 63. So, still to come. We're going to look at the specifics as to the players involved at Hearts with everybody fit. Who should get the nod? What formation would best suit Hearts? Is it one for the remaining game of the season? Or more than likely, depending on the fixtures that we have, it's probably going to be 2 or 3 different formations. But there's going to be a battle between X and Y in certain spots. We will discuss that and we'll look at where Hearts might be in 5 years' time after we take a little trip down memory lane after a horrible night up in Brora. You're listening to Scarves Around the Funnel, sponsored by Forrest Hepburn and McDonald's Signs, who've been offering creative sign and print solutions since the 1950s. Still far too early to pick our side for the Livingston game, but if we assume that most players will be fit and available, Joel, we have 3 or 4 central midfielders and maybe only 2 or 3 spots. Do you go as you did if you're Derek McInnes against Dundee with Cammy Devlin and Mark Leonard? What's the deal with Benny Beningme here? Is three into two possible in some way, or just ain't going to happen?
Well, firstly, I know I've not been on very much recently, but I'm not Joe. I'm Laurie. Um,
Goodness, sorry. That's... You've let your
uh,
hair go though. It's like that guy from Manchester United who's not getting his hair cut till they win five in a row. You're
oh,
not getting
which is
yours cut until Hearts win the league.
uh, might get a cut this week now. Right, okay, the team. Yeah, I think that the good thing is the positive signs came from Derek McInnes. He seemed pretty certain on the likes of Magnuson, Milne, and Halkett Key would be back, and he felt that Finlay would be available and Kingsley as well. I'd imagine Finlay and Kingsley wouldn't be starting, um, given they've both been out for a little bit of a period of time. And we probably don't, if Halkett's available and Milne's available, we probably don't need them to start. Milne obviously hopefully slotting back into left back, Halkett back in the centre of defence. So I'd be very surprised if it wasn't a Halkett. If those players are back, Halkett and McCart in the centre and Milne at left back, I think that would be the kind of obvious start. I think my feeling is that the shape that we saw, or at least close to that shape that we saw against Dundee, is what McInnes will probably look to try and get back to with Shankland, Devlin, and the likes coming back into the team. Obviously, our best run in the season, or certainly our most consistent run in terms of team selection and getting results, was playing a 4-4-2, and it was a little bit lopsided in terms of Harry Milne was often on the right hand side, kind of cutting in, and Kizaridis was sticking more wide on the left hand side. But I probably would have called it an advanced eight, if I referred to Altina's position in the Dundee game. But I get what McInnes is saying, and he certainly knows it better than I do. But I did quite like how his role was, kind of coming to the centre a bit, McEntee kind of pushing out wide, and then it did give us two options there if we needed to cover. And he's very good on the ball, Alton. I think you were right. I
Mhm.
think he was quite unlucky to come off, and whether it was a fitness thing or not, I don't know. But don't think it was. There was no suggestion he was tiring, but I thought he was having a good game on the ball actually, and I can see why you play him in midfield because don't forget, until a little over half a year ago, he was a midfielder. He's only recently become a defender. So I think that sort of shape, the kind of 4-4-2, you can almost call it a 4-3-3 at times if Kizariri starts pushing out wide, and whoever you've got on the other side of the midfield is more central. So I think that sort of shape is maybe what we're going to see more of if we get more of these players back in. And again, like you pointed out, I'm hoping it will allow Kizaridis to flourish a bit more and get a bit more of an opportunity to get into space to influence games. And obviously with Shankland and Braga, hopefully getting back together, that'll be important. And with two in the middle, I quite like the potential Devlin Leonard partnership. I think if everyone's available who we've talked about, I don't think Benny would come in. Wouldn't be the biggest surprise if he did, but I wouldn't think he'd come in for either of those. Now, I don't necessarily think Leonard had his best game overall against Dundee. Maybe it was just the type of game it was. But I'm very keen to see more of them together because I think Devlin Devlin is really good when if you want to play a two because you it's often like you've got three in there, I think, which just gives you more options in the outer areas of the pitch because he does so much running and he can cover so much grass. Um, you can come up against, say, a three in midfield, and it doesn't necessarily influence you as much as it would with other players. Now, Livy will likely play a back three and we'll have kind of three players in there, I think, as well. So I think that could be key for us in terms of having Devlin in there to cover that ground and make sure that we don't end up maybe getting outmanned in those positions, and then allow us to get into the positions behind the Livy wing backs if they play that way because they have generally played that sort of 3-5-2, I think, under Marvin Bartley. And that might be where the spaces are. So I think like kind of that 4-4-2 is what we might see, and I would be surprised if it wasn't Leonard and Devlin in there, unless we decide to play more of a three. But I think that kind of 4-4-2 shape. So maybe Schwolo in goals, McEntee keeping his place at right back, McCart, Halka in the centre, Milne left, like I said, Kizaridis left, Devlin Leonard in the middle. Right, I'm a bit undecided on. I would be happy to see Altona there again. But equally, maybe it's a game for Chesnikov to come in. Equally, I think he could have an opportunity before the end of the season in that role. Magnuson is another one if we want to give that position. I probably wouldn't go for that with McEntee there as well. And then Shankland, Braga, the front two. So that's what I would be feeling like we'd be going with, or something close to that for Livy, and maybe in a few more games as well between now and the end of the season.
Interesting thing's going to be how many minutes Lawrence Shankland will be able to have come the Livy game, which is 15 days after Dundee. Derek McInnes speaking about being under strict instructions, no more than 35 to 40 minutes. Those were the two numbers that he gave. He will try and sort out a bounce game. I think that's in place for the international break when that happens. So the likelihood is the players that need game time will get some. You would think by the time of the Livy game that he'll be up to at least an hour. So you're not going to start someone for 30 minutes, then bring them off and play Shankland for the last hour. Is it now a case of, right, we'll start Shankland, we'll see how he's feeling, we'll take medical advice, but we'd rather have him for the first hour than maybe the last half hour?
Yeah, and obviously the caveat there is if there's a doubt that Shankland
Yeah,
can last, or we think that you know difficult surface, shall we say, might have an impact, then yeah, obviously we'd have to take precautions. And if Shankland's maybe not feeling like he's 100% before the game or something, then we probably wouldn't take the risk. With all due respect to Livingston, it's one game, it's one that we would feel that we should manage. Not to say we will. Rangers went there and struggled, only just came away with a point. Um, but what we really don't want is Shanklin breaking down and being like, okay, that's him done for the rest of the season. So,
yeah,
yeah, the caveat there is if he can. But I would say, yeah, if we think we can confidently get an hour out of him, um, then I would rather start with our strongest team, especially attacking wise, and try and get us in a position where hopefully after an hour, maybe we're, God forbid, 2 goals ahead, and we can then say, okay, Shanklin's done his bit. He's starting to feel it a little bit. He's tiring because he's not been playing for the last 2 months very regularly,
sure.
and then take him off. And um, I think Kabori is a player who maybe then can have more of an impact in a game because it's maybe less about that control when you get to the final quarter of a match, and it does open up. Games get stretched, there's space in behind, and that's maybe when his chaos factor and the fact he can be a bit of a nuisance might occupy defenses in a different way. So yeah, I'm with you there. I think if he can get an hour out of him, then you'd want to start him, get us into a strong position in the game, and then hopefully by the time he goes off, he's helped Hearts get into a commanding position, and we can rest him for the final 30. Albeit the way games have gone this season and the way that so many teams, be them top of the table or bottom of the table, have given each other tricky matches.
Yeah.
There's never a guarantee of that.
When I was watching McEntee's goal back, there's a camera on the main stand side, and you see him celebrating. And James and Callum, the two official Hearts photographers, and a lad by the name of Ross, who's doing some Hearts photography as well on social media, which is fantastic. In both the stills and the moving picture variety, I
I
saw
think I know what you're
this lad celebrating. He actually had like a Hearts top on. He looked like he was actually a substitute. And I was like, who's that kid?
You've just
And
reminded me
then
about this.
and then I realized I was like, shit, that's Borchgrevink. Bloody hell.
But that's
I'm
another thing.
getting
That's another thing that's good. No, it's good. I should have remembered that when you were talking about the team spirit and everyone feeling part of it, because I noticed that as well. The celebration. It was like for a minute I had to double take. I was like, it's Christian Borchgrevink is celebrating with McEntee, because he's someone who, look, clearly he's not fancied by Derek McInnes. There's no point in beating around the bush with it, and we may never know if that was justifiable or not in terms of when he has played. I never think he's looked. I always thought he's looked all right, but Derek McInnes is an experienced manager, and he's got us in this position, so you can't question his decision making really. But he's still around the squad. He's still there, and clearly still feels part of it because he was right
yeah.
over there jumping around and celebrating. And I think that's great to see as well. And they just all these little things add up, don't they? On substitutes, I'm going to do a Mark Donaldson here.
It's fine.
I, just random caveat here, but Don Robertson did have a really clunky and weird, inconsistent match. I was trying to be diplomatic in commentary about it. Um, I can't remember last time a referee stopped a game before a set play to tell the substitutes to go further away. Did he? I mean, it was the Dundee subs, but they didn't seem to be unless they were doing something I didn't pick up. But I couldn't work out why he was stopping the game for a moment, and then he seemed to be gesturing to their subs to get further back, and I don't know. It just summed him up. But I don't know if you noticed that, or it was maybe just because I highlighted
No,
it in commentary. But it was just
yeah, I didn't notice that. Obviously, you mentioned it, but he's one of the referees that normally, when you see the match assignments on a Tuesday, you're like, oh well, it could be worse. The bottom
yeah.
line is there's not many great ones out there right now that you kind of. I mean, a lot of them are all about themselves, and a lot of them VAR and what team do they support and all that bollocks. It's just. Willie Collum, by trying to justify with the VAR show and everything like that, he's just digging a hole for everybody. And he's making things worse. We don't have a system in Scotland with six cameras for a Joe Blogg's average league game, that VAR has to use just six cameras. It's not VAR that's the problem. It never is. It's the human element and who's behind VAR and who's stopping it at which point and what line. And it looks clunky. And Don Robertson at the weekend, you used that word. It's a good word for it as well. Good adjective to describe his performance. It was clunky.
It's just
Normally he's all right.
inconsistent as well. It's like
Yeah. And it's just like, we're not here to see you. And we've had Clancy recently. He's not been great. Whoever else that there's been. You don't want, and I'm sure it will be, unfortunately, with 7 games to go, given everything that kind of happened recently with the Oxlade Chamberlain tackle on Elijah Just at Motherwell, which was pretty much exactly the same as the challenge on Mark Leonard, but it's foot on foot when it clearly goes down his studs. We're in a situation right now. I just really hope that we are not talking at the end of the season about an official making an error that cost a team the championship. Because right now, I don't trust any of them
yeah,
enough.
I think the thing with the weekend as well was it wasn't any match defining things. And to be honest with the Frankie Kent one, I never got a good angle of it, but it was a silly foul to make on a yellow card. Didn't have too many complaints with that, and it didn't look like Frankie Kent did either. But it was just things like straightforward things, like Ethan Hamilton for Dundee hauled a Hearts player back, didn't get a
Yep.
yellow, and it was like
Yep.
that's that's just a standard yellow. Then he did it again, and then for good measure after that one, he shoved the Hearts player down to the ground, didn't get a yellow,
Mhm.
and then Mark Leonard, I think it was, did it first time and got a yellow. And I was like, well, I've got no issue with the Mark Leonard yellows, so to speak, but you've just ignored the same thing a few
Yeah.
times, and it was like that throughout the game. Thankfully, it wasn't anything defining, but it kind of ruined the game at times. You could hear the fans getting frustrated. And I think I mentioned in commentary, it was getting to the point where obvious fouls that Hearts committed were getting derision from the stands because it was just everything was against us at that point. But he just made and it was just making it stop start. And it wasn't a game of great quality to do with the players or what they did as well. But the referee didn't help. It just
Yeah.
kept stopping it, kept not giving things one way and then giving them the other. And it was a poor performance. And he look to be fair, he was in charge for our win at Celtic Park this season, and I don't think there was anything particularly
He was very good that day.
contentious. He was pretty solid on that occasion. So yeah, he's not one that particularly concerns me normally, but he just
No,
seemed to have. And look,
just
people
had a
have off
bad day at
days,
the office.
but
Sure.
yeah, I'm with you. My concern is when it comes to referees, there's a lot of errors. And don't get me wrong, we've been on the right end of a few of them
We
at
have.
times as
Hmm.
well.
And the wrong end, but yeah, we have
But
on the right end.
yeah, you just worry you don't want us to come down to
Yeah.
um a dodgy penalty or a rubbish handball or a soft sending
Yeah.
off that ends up sending this against us. But then again, if it goes our way, then maybe we won't complain too much.
that tangent took me away from the question I was going to ask you with Borchgrevink back. He's obviously a break glass in case of emergency option, but who's our best right back? As far as not
Probably not
you
a right
or I
back.
is concerned, playing right back, is it Oisin Mac? Do you know what? I should really know as a commentator how to say his name. Oisin McEntee. Is it him as the right back being Hearts' best option between now and the end of the season?
My understanding is it's Oshin, not quite but like an Oshin
Yeah. Well,
McEntee is what I've
you've
been.
got to say it every weekend. I just have to try and butcher it every Monday.
This is what I was told by someone like the Irish pronunciation would tend to go along those lines. But then some people say their own names kind of differently. Had a,
Laurie Dunsire.
a big debate about Aaron Tishbola, who plays for Killie now, who you look at his name, it does not suggest it should be Tishbola, but that's what he says. And
Who's our
that's
best right back? We're in danger of going back
okay.
6 years again. We will do that shortly,
Depends
but
on the game.
not
I think it
just now.
depends on the game. I think McEntee is certainly a solid option, but there was a point at which he was struggling in that position as well.
So
Um,
if not him, then who?
that's the thing. That is the debate because then Steinbender made things a little bit solid for a time, but he's looked suspect more
Yep.
recently at right back. And Jordi Altena, you would potentially play there in a lot of games, but at the same time, defensively, big question marks over him. So you're probably saying at this point in the season, the person who's been most reliable on most occasions is Oisin McEntee. Yeah, you're probably going to go along to that point, I think.
It's all
Um,
set up, isn't it? As Joel Sked said, for Borchgrevink to start the final game of the season, and then, in Joel's words, Alan Forrest scoring the goal that clinches the title for Hearts. It's just been that kind of season. Expect the unexpected. Right, we'll park those tangents and we will finish this week's episode when we come back by looking ahead 5 years and wondering if any of the current squad members at Tynecastle will still be around. You're listening to Scarves Around the Funnel, sponsored by Forrest Hepburn and McDonald Signs. 5 years ago tonight, Ross Stewart was in goal. Craig Halkett started at right back. Peter Haring, Christoph Berra, and Eddie White. Jamie Walker, Aaron McInnes, Andy Irving, and Gary Mackay-Steven, with Gervain Castanier, who could be going to the World Cup with Curaçao, and Armand Nondouillet. That team lost at Brora. It just seems longer than 5 years ago, does it not?
I mean, COVID, like the height of COVID, seems like a different age, doesn't it?
Hmm.
It does seem like a long time ago, thankfully, because although we won the championship that season, it was a bit of a dark period because we were all pretty miserable anyway. We weren't able to go out and do much, empty stadiums, and even those of us who were fortunate enough to go, myself included, although thankfully didn't have to go to this game. It was pretty miserable being at football matches. There's no fans there, there's no atmosphere, and a lot of the games were played with no intensity. I think when Robbie used to come on the podcast when he was obviously manager at that time, he highlighted that as well. It was sometimes hard to get that intensity because there wasn't the support in the stands, and this was a really tricky period for us. I think we lost to Queen of the South at the weekend after it as well, which was pretty dismal. And yeah, one of the worst results in our history, to be honest, a non-league club knocking Hearts out of the cup, and we played really poorly in the game. Um, the team, yeah, interestingly, you mentioned there Halkett still being around, but you look through that list, you'd probably say there's a good chance that one of the players from the match day squad for Hearts that day is going to end the season with a winner's medal. Um, you've got Craig Halkett or you've got John Suter because John Suter was on the bench, albeit didn't come on. One of the players went on to play in the English Premier League who started the game as well, Andy Irving. So not everyone's um, had a tough way of it afterwards. But it was a miserable game, and although the season ended pretty well for us, it was just a pretty depressing time, I think, for people in general, not just football fans.
The defeat against Queen of the South that you mentioned, which subsequently followed, that was at Tynecastle by 3 goals to 2. Changes were made in that game. Liam Boyce coming into the side. Who else? Let's have a look. The Queen of the South game. Liam Boyce came into the side. Andy Halliday came into the side. Popescu came into the side. They're all gone. Halliday's still playing, of course. Liam Boyce now back over in Ireland. The whole point of this is to see in modern day football, you're lucky if you've got someone for 2 or 3 years at a club. Some will get longer than that. Obviously, Craig Halkett is still at the football club, but that was 5 years ago. So let's fast forward to the 23rd of March, 2031. Given the structure of the football club now and how probably within the next 4 transfer windows, every single signing will have been identified by Jamestown and there'll be a big turnover of players. Is there a case to say that there is 0 players right now at Tynecastle that could still be there in 5 years from now?
I think there's certainly a good case for that. I think I would say it's unlikely in 5 years there'll be anyone, um, certainly anyone who's currently in the first team, still at the club. I was trying to have a look through because obviously there are a lot of players who probably won't go into anything maybe particularly bigger or better than Hearts, and that's not necessarily a detriment to them, but just because of their age. You've got Craig Halkett, who's 30 now, who has signed a new deal. He'll be with us for probably another couple of years, but Craig Halkett in his 30s, will he go to a bigger team than Hearts? Maybe, but I would say unlikely. Maybe go sideways, but I think he's a 5 years when he's 35, will he still be at Hearts? Probably not. I mean, Harry Milne's 29. So I, the ones I was thinking of are probably because if you're younger, either you don't make it and Hearts get rid of them because they're not good enough. So the ones who are in their early 20s, probably either it's going to be they are let go because or sold because they're not good enough, or they do develop into a better player and they're sold because their value goes up and we can make more money on them. So I think the likelihood is maybe the ones who are at the point of the value going down already, but they're a good squad player to have around because we do have to bear in mind it's still good to have core players in that dressing room, and you can see it with the likes of Brighton with having someone like James Milner around. I don't think Milner's there now for his on-field contributions on the whole.
Sure.
It's just a good player to have in the dressing room. So look, Harry Milne, 29, 5 years will be 34, something
I
like
think
that.
Hearts will look to sell him in the summer.
I think I,
And
I
that
think we will, but someone who's going to turn 30 this year, will Hearts get the amount of money for him which will make it worthwhile versus what he can contribute as a player? Um, Even ones like I was thinking, kind of these squad players as they get older. I was even thinking like a Jamie McCart because he's in a long deal. He's 28, so he'll only be 33. He seems happy to be a squad player. Not in terms of he's not going to be happy to sit on the bench every week, but he's stepped up well when he's been asked. Don't get me wrong, this is not me saying I definitely think these players will be here, but I'm trying to think who could possibly be here. He's on a long deal, probably not going to make much money on Jamie McCart, but he's a good pro, it seems like, and he's an established player in Scotland, and maybe someone like that would be the kind of potential, I would say. McEntee, 25. We're going to make a lot of money on Oisin McEntee, but is he a good player to have around the squad?
But how many of
Is
these, as Scotty calls them, legacy players, how many are we going to be carrying?
or but we're ideally not going to carry anyone, I don't think, for the sake of it. And 5 years, they won't have anyone. No one's going to be in a deal which is still running in 5 years' time. So I think you're right. I think it's unlikely any of them will be here. For me, it'll be the ones who are sort of late 20s just now, and will they be able to be a squad contributor and a good person to have around the squad in that time? That's the only kind of, I would say, outside chances potentially. Craig
Yeah,
Gordon,
and look,
still
I was
backup
about to say
goalkeeper when he's 48.
Craig Gordon will be preparing for Euro 32. No, it's a World Cup year. Is it? No, I don't know. It's a Euro
Scotland
year.
number one, but won't have played for Hearts since 2026.
Exactly. Um, so that's still to come. That's still to come. I don't know if there'll be anybody. I doubt it. I highly
It's
doubt it.
unlikely. I mean, it's in some ways it's surprising that from that, when you think back to the fact that, that Brora game was so miserable that we've still got players around. But, Craig Halkett has been a pretty good servant to Hearts. I know he's had his injury challenges, but he's been fantastic this season. So uh, it's maybe not unheard of that someone, but I think the Jamestown thing is where it'd be interesting because you feel like players are either going to be they're not good enough and we just need to get rid of them for that reason, or if they are, then they're worth selling on because they've got a sell on value and we look for someone else to come in and replace them with the money that we get. Um, it's just whether some players fall into that bracket of they still contribute enough, but they're at an age or they're the player type that we're just not going to get much money for, which sometimes happens.
It's an interesting one, this one, Laurie, because I still think there's a place for legacy players. I still think there's a place for players that know the league,
And the
that
club,
get
I think.
that get that's the key thing, that get the club, know the league, know what it's all about to play for Hearts. Yeah, there'll be kids coming through the ranks that Manchester City haven't signed yet that will hopefully have a part to play. I would
What
love
about Laurie
nothing
Shankland?
more. What age will he be? 35
35.
by then?
I mean, look, he doesn't have any pace, so
He's not going to lose what
he's
he
not
doesn't
gonna lose what he
have.
doesn't have.
Yeah, I mean, that would be something. I mean,
I,
he'd be looking for his fifth consecutive league winners medal by that year.
I'm not saying
Why
it's
would he want
likely,
to
but
leave?
what do you normally, what do you tend to lose as you get older? You lose that turn of pace, you lose your acceleration, and don't get me wrong, Shankland does cover quite a bit of ground despite him not being fast, so you'd lose that. But his key attributes aren't to do with his anything to do with his speed or his stamina. It's to do with his
Yeah, true.
intelligence, isn't it? So he's not gonna lose that. Maybe he starts sitting a bit. I know he likes to sit deep anyway, but maybe he drops even deeper. Wayne Rooney started doing that, didn't he? Kind of went deeper and deeper as he got older. And again,
Maybe.
I'm just trying to throw potentials out there. What about Brora? Who's still kicking around Brora? I mean, I think the guy who opened the scoring was an electrician who now plays for Clachnacudden.
I thought you were going to say, well, he's moved from Hoddit and Sons to Doddit and Sons down nearby in the local village. That's something I don't have I've just got the heart
So neither did
starting
I. I just
rhythm
looked at it just now, just out of
from
interest.
from that day. Hopefully we don't have to mention that. Well, apart from the 10-year anniversary, where we talk about in 10 years from now, in 2041, how many Hearts players might still be around. How many league titles might Hearts have won
And we should
by
say a
then?
big thank you to Aberdeen Football Club because
Darvel?
they seriously took the heat off us in the years since that Brora result because they've managed to um, get beat by someone at a lower level. And now when people think of the biggest Scottish Cup upsets and the worst results for teams in the Scottish Cup, because don't remember, Hearts weren't actually even a top flight team when we lost to Brora. So yeah, Aberdeen top flight getting beat by I think seventh tier, seventh level, I think, Darvel. It's hard to remember how the structure when you get that low. That has certainly meant that people think less about that Brora game. So thank you to Aberdeen for that.
Playing devil's advocate, if I'm an Aberdeen fan, I'd probably take a defeat to a seventh tier and a cup win. Just saying.
Uh, yeah, but they didn't do the two things at the same time.
No, I'm just saying if to get that cup win, you have to have lost to a seventh tier side. Do
Well,
you sign up for that?
yeah, but it was like a few years after. So I
No, I
mean,
know, I know. I'm just saying.
I mean, look, but
That,
then look, if that's like saying I take the defeat to Brora Rangers if it means winning the league title in 2026,
yeah.
even though it's 5 years later.
Well, you're in charge of the editing for this, so you can edit this bit out. You're listening to Scarves Around the Funnel, sponsored by Forrest Hepburn and McDonald Signs. Still got another episode to go next week prior to the Livy game, but I fully expected to be going into that one with both Rangers and Celtic following Hearts into the winner's circle. at the weekend. There's a wee bit extra pep in the step now with Celtic not just dropping 2 points, but dropping all 3 points. Didn't get anything from Tannadice. I still think it's a three-horse race for the title. The intriguing thing for me now is the SPFL has had a lot of time now to work on these fixtures as to who's playing when after the split. What we know is likely is that both the Glasgow and Edinburgh derbies will take place in the first three
Yeah.
weeks of the last five rounds of games, with probably Rangers Celtic being game week 36 at Celtic Park and Hearts Hibs being either 34 or 35. But they also have to take into account, depending on how many title contenders there are, do they really want a final day fixture with Hearts facing a team that might have absolutely zero incentive to beat Hearts if it hands their Glasgow rivals the title? I don't fancy that job putting these fixtures together.
Yeah, it's very tricky, isn't it? Because I think I'd thought about this potential. I just keep thinking we'll get Celtic away as the last game of the season. And if Celtic were out of the title race by then, it's the absolute ideal fixture because they
Hmm.
may have a cup final the following week and they will have very little incentive to defeat Hearts to win Rangers the league title. Now, don't get me wrong, individual players probably wouldn't really bother most of them. Manager would probably still set a team out to win the game, but the atmosphere would be one of one that would not really support a home team doing an awful lot. So
We'd have 60,000 fans that day
yeah, it would
at
be very
Celtic Park.
surreal. And the same goes for things like the Hibs factor that do you want Hibs playing Rangers or Celtic on the last day and them potentially influencing it? Because again, David Gray and his players aren't going to chuck a game, but the atmosphere wouldn't be backing them really, and it would be an odd situation for them because if Hibs are at home to Rangers and Hearts are playing Celtic, it'll be really weird because the atmospheres at both games will be everyone pretty much leaning towards wanting the same result, and it
Mhm.
will draw questions. You're not going to get, like I say, players are professionals. They are not going to go out to not win a game, but at the same time, is there going to be that extra 5%, that extra push when your fans aren't even behind you? You're not going to go out to if it's going to put your body on the line and stuff to do something extra to try and win a game if your fans don't even want you to. So yeah, it's an interesting conundrum, and yeah, absolutely, the derbies will be out the way as early as they can possibly do it because they also will not want anyone to be winning a league title against their rivals. Hearts winning at Easter Road or Celtic or Rangers winning it against each other. It just, it just spells potential problems. So I wonder if things they'll probably have a few potential scenarios, but I think that may change depending on what happens in the next two games because if I don't necessarily think it's likely, but if Celtic lost to Dundee and Hearts and Rangers keep winning and Celtic look like they are completely out of it, then they will maybe factor that in that it looks like it'll be Hearts and Rangers to play out the fixtures that maybe on the final day there aren't games that maybe sit with Celtic having an influence too much on it. So maybe it'll end up being the Celtic Hibs on the final day if say Hearts and Rangers were the two fighting for it, and and Hearts and Rangers play the other two, which would be Motherwell and looking likely to be Falkirk, something like that. So they probably have a few different scenarios, but probably twists and turns to come in the next two games because really interesting dynamic with Rangers potentially going top and us, like you said, having to deal with that for the first time. I think Celtic could have a really tough game at Dens Park again. Um, and then Falkirk host Rangers before the end of the split, and Falkirk have already
Right.
taken points off Rangers twice this season. So it could have a lot of twists and turns yet. So I don't actually envy them on that one because there's so many things they have to factor in. And also we've got to remember it's people fighting for European places. So they've got to make sure they don't end up in situations where um, certain results influence them the wrong way, etc. So yeah, well, not often I don't envy the SPFL or give them a bit of leeway, but I will on this occasion.
I'm going to end with one question to you, and I'm not convinced I know which answer I'm going to get from you. So
I
here's
think I
the
know what you might be asking me.
okay.
Would
What do you think I'm
I?
going to ask you?
I'm guessing. Would I take a title decider between us and Rangers to win the league?
Very good.
Is that what you're
Um,
going to ask me?
I
So
was,
similar?
but with a caveat,
Okay.
Hearts have at least a 1 point lead,
Yeah, I
and
was going to say a
Celtic are
game
out.
where we have
Celtic
to.
are out. So it's not so much a winner takes all because a draw for Hearts would be enough, and a win, of course, to win the title. But I'm offering you that now with 7 games to go, that you're playing Rangers with a lead in the final game of the season at home, but it's a lead that can be overtaken if Rangers win. Do you want to play out the season and not accept that, or do you take that right now, knowing it's basically 1 game for the title? What would you do?
I'd have to take it right now. I think the way Rangers are are getting results, and I mentioned we're the only team that's beaten them so far. Um, I think if it was the other way around, if it was a question with Celtic and being at Celtic Park, I wouldn't take that right now because I'd hate to be in that situation, despite Celtic not being great. But I think the fact we have them at home, um, the way we've been at home, we've not lost a home league game in almost a year now. We've beaten Rangers twice. I thought we were pretty convincing when we beat them at Tynecastle. We played superbly that game. And although Rangers having a good spell under Danny Rule, I don't know what their bottle's like yet. In terms of when they really get tested, and they didn't perform at Tynecastle when we did test it. They didn't. They struggled in the first half at Ibrox when we tested them, albeit they ran out comfortable winners in the end. So, given there's only 3 points between the two teams, given we've got some tough games after the split, I would absolutely take right now. If you said it's going to come down to Hearts Rangers at home, we don't even have to win. We just have to not get beaten.
Hmm.
Yes, right now with only a 3 point lead, I would definitely take that.
And how are you feeling when it's tied going into added time?
I mean, just like every other week at the moment, but tenfold probably. God, you feel the way the season's gone. I know if you listen to the Hearts standard, Joel's had this incredible optimism that Hearts are just going to coast and it's going to just get a bigger and bigger lead. I've just felt like it's just gonna go down to the wire and it's gonna be nervy and that's the way it's gonna be. And it's probably going to be an outpouring of emotion from many of us, one way or the other, because it's going to be close. And if we don't get it, it's going to feel heartbreaking because it would have been almost within our reach. And if we get it, it's going to be an incredible release. So I think it's going to be the most nervy, intense feeling most of us have ever had because most of us either weren't around or certainly not old enough to really remember it. 86, we've never had it as close since then. So yeah, yeah, buckle up. I think we're in for a bumpy ride, but hopefully at the end of it, we're all smiling.
For what it's worth, I wouldn't take that offer.
You wouldn't? Okay.
No, I think we can get it done before then.
I mean,
I
I absolutely hope you're right.
think the final day of the season it can be like going to Ibrox in 05, 06. And I know it'll be a Saturday round of fixtures that the top six will be playing in this season. And that was a Sunday where we had the newspapers and the beach balls and everything like that. But I just think there's more twists and turns to come. We just need to focus on our own game. And I think the biggest thing that Hearts might have is that Rangers and maybe Celtic right now, especially, just run out of games. So I hope I'm right because I don't know if this ticker could take going into added time at the end of the final game of the season, knowing that 1 goal for the visitors
The board
might
comes
lose
up.
us the league title.
17 added minutes signal to you at
Yes, and
Tynecastle.
then we're looking at Brother Beaton, or we're looking at all the ones that have got allegiances supposedly, and we're like,
Oh,
oh dear.
every corner. Wait. We're looking for
Stop.
something. Wait.
Imagine that. The time's up, but hold on, there's a VAR check. And let's
Oh,
go. Let's go to the VAR studio and VAR official for this one, Broxy Bear. Broxy, what do you say? Yeah, let's hope it doesn't come to that. Anyway, from Brora to talking about titles, eh? The dichotomy is stark being a supporter of Heart Midlothian Football Club. Get well soon to Scott McIntosh. Hopefully he's back next week. Thank you to Laurie Dunsire for his
From
cameo
Brora to
appearance
Braga. There you go.
this week. He is Laurie Dunsire. There you go. From Brora to Braga. That'll do for the title. We'll see you again next week. Bye for now.